Taoiseach Micheál Martin has said the presidential campaign was a major setback and a devastating outcome for which he takes full responsibility. He also said that he was made aware of a potential tenant issue ahead of a critical party vote to decide on Jim Gavin. He was speaking on RTE Radio following last night's heated parliamentary party meeting where he was heavily criticised over his handling of Mr Gavin's selection.
Last night saw a marathon internal Fianna Fáil meeting at Leinster House to rake over its botched presidential campaign. Today, Taoiseach Micheál Martin stepped up to publicly address his critics, saying he accepted the blame for the debacle.
This was a major setback. It was a devastating outcome for the party. I didn't want this. And I've made it very clear, I take full responsibility. I'm sorry for what happened. I said this to the party membership.
The Taoiseach defended the choice of Jim Gavin as a candidate with strengths who would have been competitive, whereas he said other potential runners were not at that level. He also revealed that he was in the loop when an issue was flagged with senior party figures indicating a tenant issue. This happened just before the party decided on its presidential candidate. However, the party was not informed.
Fianna Fáil rang Deirdre Gillan and said, did you do your due diligence? Do you know anything about a tenant dispute? She says no. And he's only gone off to stack it up now. And she told Sean Dorgan, I was told, and basically Sean Dorgan went to Jim Gavin, and Jim Gavin said, no, there's no issue with a tenant. I never had an issue with a tenant.
He denied that information was withheld from the parliamentary party, downplaying the contact as a query received at a time of spurious rumours. There remains differing views in the party on whether this is over.
In Fianna Fáil, we're a party that allows people have a point of view and allows them to articulate that point of view. We don't shut down discussions. So this has been a good thing. But we need to move on now and focus on what we're elected to do.
We can't draw a line in the sand, having expended 400,000 and expecting our organisation to provide those funds over the years.
The Taoiseach is in Brussels now for a European Council meeting. He will be hoping that he can leave this disaster behind him as the political term winds down. Sandra Hurley, RTE News, Leinster House.
Well, for more on this, we're joined by our political correspondent, Paul Cunningham from Leinster House. And what's the sense there, Paul? Has Micheál Martin managed to draw a line in the sand on this controversy?
The truth is, we simply don't know. There is a bloc within the Fianna Fáil parliamentary party which believes there are still questions to be answered in relation to the presidential campaign, as you heard from Micheál Kelleher, the Donegal TD. But it is wider than that. They also believe that there's issues within the governance of the party, that it's too top-down rather than bottom-up, and they're seeking substantial changes. And they believe part of the problem is Micheál Martin. On the other hand, you heard the supporters of Micheál Martin saying they have to draw a line in the sand. There are people out there who are not interested in internal bickering within Fianna Fáil. They want the coalition to act on the cost of living crisis, on housing and homelessness, on those issues. That's where the party needs to get to. And then in the middle there's a centrist bloc who on the one hand do want to draw a line on this. They don't want this to keep going on into the weeds about who knew what and why. And yet at the same time they too believe that governance is a key issue. So the Dáil rises tomorrow. Micheál Martin is going to be in Brussels. This whole thing is effectively going to be shelved until January, but when it comes back, that'll be one of the focuses. What does Micheál Martin do to try and ameliorate the damage which he has sustained, try and involve more of his parliamentary party, draw some of the poison? But here's the bottom line, is that there is a bloc within Fianna Fáil who believe Micheál Martin is the problem and they're not going away.
Paul Cunningham at Leinster House. Thank you. Well, returning to that Fianna Fáil story, and we're joined by James Lawless, Minister for Further and Higher Education. And thanks for joining us in studio, Minister. You were in fact one of the first Cabinet Ministers to publicly back Jim Gavin. You campaigned on his behalf. When were you made aware of this issue between Jim Gavin and a former tenant?
On the Sunday that he pulled out of the race, I was actually Director of Elections for North Leinster. I was a supporter of his. I thought he was a very strong candidate. When I first learned in probably mid-August that his name was in circulation as a potential candidate, there was a very significant, I think, excitement, actually, and positive response to that. I represent North Kildare. We're a commuter belt constituency. We're on the edge of Dublin. Yeah. And so people would have been aware of his GA prowess.
They would. And in early September then, senior people in your party, including the Taoiseach, were made aware of a potential issue surrounding Jim Gavin and a former tenant. Would you have liked to have known sooner when they were made aware? Would you have liked to have been made aware as well?
I think we'd all like to have been aware sooner, and obviously it would have been something we could have considered in terms of the campaign we mounted and even the selection process. But having said that, my understanding is that the queries came in across September. And that they were, I suppose the phrase has been used, general in nature. Now, I got this report like everyone else last night, about 24 hours ago. I read it, I was at the parliamentary party last night. I accept all of it, face value. I want to thank my colleagues for their work in preparing it, and indeed the senior counsel that assisted.
Is it acceptable to you, though, that the party didn't dig deeper? Your colleague, MEP Cynthia Nivercu, for example, has made the point that this was an election during a housing crisis and this was a potential issue surrounding a tenant. It should have raised red flags. There should have been more vigorous due diligence.
Look, I think there's no doubt that this was, and it was indeed terminal to his campaign, I think rightly so, the ethical, the moral issues that it raises, the nature of the issue, the sensitivities around housing, the fact that so many people are struggling with housing at the moment. So I think that had this come to light sooner, I think there would have been a very different maybe approach, certainly. And it's very frustrating, it's very disappointing, and we really, it's a major, as the Taoiseach said himself, a major setback to the party. But what we need to do now is we need to get on with the job of government. We did win the last general election. We have just formed a government less than a year ago. We're not even into year one of that 5-year term. And we have an awful lot of work to do on things like housing, on things like infrastructure, on things like the economy. And my own Department of Higher Education, leading out, I met students' unions this morning, very much engaged. It's non-stop the work that we are engaged in the government. And I suppose, I think really, and the mood of the meeting last night, I was at the meeting for all 4 or 5 hours, whatever it was, everybody is frustrated and everybody wishes we weren't where we are. But I think the consensus is, at this stage, we want to put this behind us. We want to draw a line under it and move on.
If I may cut across you, this is a debacle that has cost the party up to €400,000. And yes, it seems that nobody has really faced any consequences. It seems to have been put down to the classic systems failure. Who should be held accountable for this?
Yeah, so look, I suppose you look back as well. So you asked about what questions were asked at the time. And I said I wasn't involved in the vetting or the grilling process. I understand there was a number of meetings with senior party officials and indeed senior party representatives across, I think the report says, across July into August. And there was also various searches performed. Now, I suppose one of the difficulties with this is that there was no recorded judgment, there's no Stubbs Gazette entry, there's no litigation on file. It's not necessarily easy to find something of this nature. I'm told, again, I'm taking this at face value, that the candidate was asked these questions and he responded in the negative on several occasions. And I suppose another thing that might have given some comfort, or, because hindsight's 2020, but I think if you look back on it, this was a man who was in the public eye for almost a decade as a sporting leader. Obviously, he's working in the Defence Forces, which stands on its own record, but someone who was in the media spotlight. And I suppose there may have been an expectation that if there was some hidden scandal, surely it would have emerged. And actually, it is curious now that when we're told this was an open secret in certain newsrooms, why was it never reported on before?
Well, some people are warning, some people in your parliamentary party are warning that this controversy is far from over. Do you think Micheál Martin's leadership is in immediate danger?
I don't. I mean, look, he's in Brussels as we speak. He's negotiating with European leaders on the future of the Ukraine war with Russia. Really serious business going on. He's leading the country. But I think, and absolutely, he's my full confidence in doing so, of course. And we are only 1 year into a 5-year term.
And will he be leading the party come the next general election?
Look, that's 4 years away. But I think that we have to, I expect so. But I think we have to have respect for the man. He has led the party for almost a decade and a half. He's led the country on 2 occasions as Taoiseach. This, in one way, is his first proper, because he had COVID, he had Ukraine, he had so much going on in the first run. And really, we have such a job of work to do. We need to fast-track infrastructure, we need to build out housing, we need to keep the economy on track, the pro-enterprise model that we've embraced. Okay. And the other point I'd say more generally, the idea of taking candidates from outside the political spectrum. So we have in our Dáil Shannon, we have new candidates. We have Martin Daly, a medical doctor, Cynthia Nivercu, a barrister, Dee Ryan, a business leader. They all came into the party from outside in the last election. They're outstanding representatives. So the idea that we shouldn't look outside the fold, I think, is flawed. And I think that it's public. We represent the public. We need to be of the public. This was a major mistake. There's no doubt about it. We will learn lessons. We will apply them through the Arcordia, through the National Executive, and fix the process going forward.
Minister James Lawless, thanks indeed for joining us on 6-1.